Chromosomes. Little strands of nucleic acids and proteins are the fundamental genetic instructions that tell us who we are at birth. Most people are born with 46 chromosomes, but each year in the United States, about 6,000 people are born with an extra chromosome, making them a person with Down syndrome. If you've ever encountered someone with Down syndrome, you know that they are some of the kindest, most joyful people you will ever meet. They truly have something extra. My name is Lisa Nichols, and I have spent the last 24 years as both the CEO of Technology Partners and as the mother to Allie. Allie has something extra in every sense of the word. I have been blessed to be by her side as she impacts everyone she meets. Through these two important roles as CEO and mother to Allie, I have witnessed countless life lessons that have fundamentally changed the way I look at the world. While you may not have an extra chromosome, every leader has something extra that defines who you are. Join me as I explore the something extra in leaders from all walks of life and discover how that difference in each of them has made a difference in their companies, their families, their communities, and in themselves. If you like this episode today, please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave us a 5-star rating. I am thrilled to have Donnie Campbell on the show today. Donnie is a keynote speaker, math teacher, and basketball coach who inspired the character Ted Lasso. Well, Donnie Campbell, welcome to the Something Extra podcast. I am so delighted that we could make this happen. I've been looking so forward to this time with you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to jump in and talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well, that sounds good. Well, we're going to talk about a lot. So,
Okay.
but I always start, Donnie, just by giving shout outs to how you and I got connected. Our mutual friend, Tim Sater, with AIM said, Lisa, you got to have Donnie. And of course, you didn't know this because I don't know, there were 800 people there or something, but you were the keynote speaker for this year's AIM.
Right.
In May. I did a breakout, but you were the big keynote speaker and I was in the audience and I absolutely loved hearing from you. So I'm just delighted to have some time with you today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I mean, Tim Sater is one of the all-time great guys. They gave us a bag for speaking there and it's got AIM on it. And when I see the bag, because I use it everywhere now, I carry my computer when I travel. So when I see it, I think of him and it just puts a smile on my face because I really enjoyed my time speaking. And it was one of my second or third, it was a little intimidating because I was up in front of about 800 people and I was nervous but once I get going and I get talking and I enjoy talking about leadership and stories with Jason and stories of my journey as coaching and teaching, your mind just, and you're a speaker, you understand, then you just go, and Tim made it very, very comfortable for me. His whole staff there with AIM is phenomenal.
Fantastic. Yeah. So for anybody in St. Louis that has not been to that AIM conference, and I want to say it's about the same time frame every year, about the May time frame. If you've not been to that conference, it is definitely well worth it. And you can hear amazing speakers like Donnie. So for those of you who don't know Donnie, and for those of you who are Ted Lasso fans out there, Jenny and I happen to be two of the biggest fans. We love that show, Ted Lasso. Donnie is the big inspiration for the Ted Lasso character, played by Jason Sudeikis. I think now, Donnie, I want to say the Ted Lasso, it was had won 5 Emmy Awards. It is just an amazing show. So we'll talk about that. I want to get your predictions on if there's going to be other seasons. I don't know.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping. Jason, I'm sure, I think I'm not in his position, but I'm sure that when I was watching him, just from my perspective, he looked tired. Even though it was great. I mean, the last season was phenomenal. But just for me, outside looking in, he looked like to me he was a little tired. And I think sometimes, I'm sure it's putting that show on takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. they're taking a little break, but and also I think sometimes, he probably knows when it's time to move on too. Maybe
Right.
there's not anything that they could put out there that would make it any better. But knowing him, he's so talented. If they're going to do something, he won't do something unless it's really, really good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to your point, I mean, maybe it's going to be something different, but I will talk more about the show. But before we get into all of that, Donnie, I want you to take me back to really the very beginning. No, take me back to just growing up. I know that you grew up in a little town in Kansas, I think, Kansas, about
Right.
3,300 people. Tell
Right.
me about growing up.
Well, my dad was a machinist, and worked 40 years as a machinist, and my mom worked for the government. She was a secretary, and I grew up in a very small, humble beginnings, and it was great. It was like I had a Tom Sawyer life. I mean, you went outside in the summer, and mom would say, "Hey, don't be coming in. You're letting all the air out. So if you need a drink, you got it off the faucet or the hose." And we played football every day. We played basketball. We went to the swimming pool, and my parents were very, very, very spiritual people, very grounded people. Um, they could give me a kick in the butt when I needed it, but they could also put their arm around me and tell me how much they loved me. So I always knew I was loved, and I was an all-state quarterback. I was an all-state basketball player. I ran on 2 state championship track teams, and went to Kansas State and played football and signed a short professional football. I played basketball at K-State too, but I did sign as a free agent a contract to play for the Houston Oilers. A lot of people don't know who the Houston Oilers are, but I probably had the shortest pro career of anybody in the history of the NFL. But I learned a ton. I really did. I learned a ton. And when I quit, I knew I was ready to start teaching and coaching, because that was really my love. That's what I knew I wanted to do, was teach and coach. My parents did not want me to teach and coach. It wasn't that they didn't have tremendous respect for teachers, but
Mm-hmm.
they just said, Donnie, you're always going to struggle. You're always going to. And I think I remember, and I said it in different terms, but I'll paraphrase it. I said, I'm not really worried about the money. I'm worried about making a difference with kids, because I had so many people growing up, including my parents, my teachers, my coaches, who did so much for me, and spoke greatness into me, and saw greatness into me that I didn't even believe, and I'm just been very, very lucky with the people that I've had throughout my years of life that have motivated me, have told me what I need to hear. Sometimes maybe not what I always want to hear. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew that they cared about me and they wanted what was best for me. And that's what my parents were. But I haven't been back to Lions. Both my parents passed in 2014. My brother was a huge influence. He was 10 years older than me. He played at the University of Arkansas. So when he would come, he was quite a bit older than me. And of course, everybody called me Doug instead of Donnie growing up, because my brother was such a great athlete. And I wanted to be like Doug. I wanted to be a basketball
Mm-hmm.
player. I wanted to play at Arkansas like him. He held a rebounding record at one time, but he was my hero growing up, and I wanted to be like him. And he ended up passing. He died of cancer 3 or 4 years ago. So he was my inspiration at times, and I miss him. I think about him every day, and my parents as well. And then,
Mm-hmm.
but I get a smile on my face when I think about him. And then I have an older sister who lives in Reno, Nevada, and she spoiled me rotten. Uh, she's probably she's only about 5'4", 5'5", but she could beat my brother and I both up. And she's one of the
Love it.
kindest. She's one of the, probably between all three of us, she's probably the most like my mom. My mom was never said a bad word in her life. She
Mm-hmm.
never drank. She never smoked. She never. And I have a rule in my classroom that I call it Vi's rule. My mom's name was Vi. That 2 rules I have is, number one, you won't use profanity, and number two is, if you don't have anything good to say, you don't say it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my
Yeah.
my upbringing, and the values that I was taught growing up. And I think it really starts coming. anybody's come from a small town know that the people there are hardworking, they're honest, they're handshake. You can believe everything they say. And that's kind of where I was raised. And I always go back to those values and standards that I was taught at a very, very young age.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't planned on talking about this, Donnie, but you cannot imagine. I mean, I need to do a study on it. How many leaders I talked to, amazing leaders that came from very small towns.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. They have a lot of aunts and uncles that are that aren't really your aunt or your uncle,
Right.
but people watch out
Right.
for each other in those small towns, don't they? And you can't
They
get away
really
with
do.
stuff either, you know?
I
And
remember one time, of course, you didn't have cell phones back there, and we were playing baseball, and it was in a lot. And I threw a ball that broke a window, and I think we all ran. And I was young then. I must have been 6 or 7. Before I got home, my dad already knew. And
somebody had
he
called them.
says, I'm going to pay for that, but you're going to have to work to pay me back. So that was a lesson
Mhm.
right there. You make a mistake, you're gonna pay for it, and it was a great lesson for me. And my dad, going back to, he had 13 brothers and sisters. Really, no, 7 boys, 7 girls. One was stillborn. My dad was the oldest, and one of their emphasis, both my parents, my mom, they both were raised on the farm, and
Mhm.
we lived in a small town. I mean, I knew that I didn't want to be a farmer. It was too hard to work and
It's
too
hard work, isn't it?
unpredictable. But they're
Yes.
the salt of the earth people, but my dad and parents really emphasized an education. They wanted all 3 of us to go to college and to better. They wanted, as all parents do, they want their children to be better than them. And but my dad, this is really, I know it's kind of off the wall, but my dad was in Hiroshima the day after it was bombed.
Mm.
And
Wow.
so, he was in the army. He fought in World War II, and he never really talked much about it, but he did do that. And he had some stories though later in his life that he would tell me. But
I
I
hope you were able to capture those somehow,
well, there
Donnie.
was a gal that wanted to record him. I don't think they ever did. I don't think they ever did. And but we have pictures and stuff that my sister and I have from he took when he was there and things like that. And but he really didn't talk much about it because he was
Mhm.
one of the first ones in.
Mm.
And so he didn't. He kept it really to himself. And but my mom, she worked for the government, and she very soft spoken. Never didn't say a lot, but when she did say it, you knew she meant business.
Mhm.
And I still remember my brother and I got in kind of a wrestling match. Of course, he could whoop me. He's 10 years older than me. And we had broken a chair or something wrestling around. And she chased us out of the house. You guys just need to leave. And of course, if you've got boys, you know how boys are. I mean,
Yes.
we were probably throwing the football or
Rambunctious.
yes, in the house. But I miss my parents and the wisdom that they gave me.
Mm.
You think about it, you don't realize how smart your parents are until you get to be about 24, right?
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Donnie, I knew that about you, that you lost several really close people, your brother and your parents, all very close together. And, I wasn't really planning on talking about this necessarily, but, I've lost both of my parents now. I lost my dad last year. Um, you know, it's, I mean, you've experienced a lot of highs in your life, but that's adversity and hard times too. And I mean, what, like, going back to the Houston Oilers when you got cut, from that. I mean, what was the lesson? What were the key lessons, do you feel like, that you learned through that?
Well, I've always believed that, and at the time, I'm sure I didn't see it as a lesson, but I had done everything I could. I'd get myself in great shape. I'd done a lot of throwing. I was a quarterback, and Warren Moon was there at that time, who was ended up being in the Hall of Fame, and Oliver Luck, whose boy ended up playing for the Colts. And but I just realized it was time for me to move on, and I took those lessons and I've used them in my coaching and my teaching. I didn't really fail. I mean, I think you fail forward. You take those
Mm-hmm.
lessons and learn. I think you learn a lot of times through your own frustrations.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew I was ready to start teaching and coaching. I don't look at it as a bad situation. I look at it as how many things I learned when I was there. And very few people get an opportunity to go to a pro football camp. And I did. And
Yes.
I watched, and I think many of us, we were given two ears and one mouth. I really use this a lot. And I really think if you really observe more, I was telling our kids at the camp, one of the best things you can do as a player, as a student, as anybody, just observe people, observe. And I told them on the basketball floor, sometimes we see, but very few people look.
Mm-hmm.
Very few
Mm-hmm.
people, they hear, but they really don't listen. And if you can learn to observe, it already makes you a better student, a better basketball player, a better really leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that very early in my life when I first started, when I played for the Oilers and when I played football at Kansas State. I listened a lot more than I talked. Um,
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit overwhelming because I'm talking more than I'm really listening. So,
Right.
but I'm
But you still had that. I'm sure you do. You still, I mean, even when you're talking, you're listening to the audience or you're reading the audience, Donnie. And,
Yep.
I'm a firm believer too. I believe that everything, and I don't like the word failure because I don't think I think it's only failure if you don't try, really. But when things don't go the way that you had hoped that they were, that's just part of your journey, and you just take those things and you carry them forward with you to the next thing. So yeah, I'm a very, very big believer in that too. And we can learn, I think we learn so much more sometimes in the valley of those, but there's no mountains without valleys,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
There aren't, and so
The
yeah.
thing one of my favorite quotes I love is, it's not what you achieve, it's what you overcome. And I've always, what we tried to do when I coached is I wanted to practice harder than a game. So we put them in situations in practice that they had to learn to talk, they had to learn to communicate with each other. And one of the things we always did a lot of disadvantage drills where we'd play 5-on-4, 6-on-4. We'd have 5 offensive players against 4 defenders, which is harder than it's ever going to be in a game.
Mhm.
And it taught our kids, number one, it gave them great confidence that they knew that if 4 could guard 5, 5-on-5 was going to be easy. And it also taught them to overcome adversity, to to
Mhm.
to love it. It's a challenge, right? But it's making you better. It's bringing our team together, and I really love that because also when you do that, it creates communication. We talk and we communicate now, but we don't really talk. In a basketball team, you have to talk.
Right.
I tell the kids all the time, you can't have your cell phone out there and texting each other on the basketball floor. And if you're not talking, I always told my kids, you're not playing defense. And so I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that you learn so much more. I think the two hardest things and I've learned from both, the two hardest things as a human being to handle is failure and success.
Success. Mhm. Wow.
Success, always success, you get a little cocky. You start thinking you're a little bit better than what you are. Who amazes me so much is Tom Brady. I mean, here a guy that's had it all, but he's constantly looking to get better when he played, and to have that drive. Win a Super Bowl, numerous Super Bowls, and each year come back to overcome that complacency, to me, is wow. I mean, that is hard to do. I can remember we won a state championship, and the next year we had a better team. And we made it to the state tournament, but I never felt like I reached those kids. I never felt like I kept the pedal to the metal. And it was a great lesson for me that I needed to work harder when you're having success. I need to, but when I first started coaching, I took a job that was probably the worst job in Kansas. And when I took the job, I asked my head coach, I said, "This is not a very good job." He said, "Well, Donnie, you've never been a head coach. You're not going to get a good job," which was humbling, right?
Right.
He says, "You have to take this job and turn it into a good job." So every night we'd get beat, and I had about a 30-minute drive home. And by the time you got home, it wasn't much fun. But I was constantly talking to other coaches. I was getting resources. I was trying to find out different ways to get better. And I improved so much. So I think for me, when things were going well, I think I'm better.
Yes.
I think when things go well, I'm not as good.
Yes. Right.
So
Right.
I think the biggest mistake young coaches make, probably young leaders, is have success early, because then they think they know it all. As I didn't get that opportunity. We were failing, and I had to constantly reach out, find different resources, get better, talk to people, observe, and on all those things. And that was just something I learned at a very young age, very young coaching career.
That's I love that. I love that story. Well, and you've probably said 3 or 4 of these things since you and I've been talking, Donnie. But I know Jason always said that you were great and you were well known for aphorisms, and sayings. I mean, where do you believe those came from? Where do you believe those motivational quotes? I mean, have you been just a student of leadership and a student of that for as long as you can remember? Did it come from your mom, your dad, coaches that you had?
A little bit of everything.
Uh-huh.
When we were not being successful, you have a lot of questions. So I started studying leadership. And one of the persons that I came across was John Wooden. And
Love
he's
him.
one of the greatest leaders. If you really want to get better as a leader, you need to study John Wooden. And I had a little blue book, and I think I have it here. Yeah, there it is. And what I would do is, this little blue book, I would find little quotes and things in it that would be relevant for whatever our team was going through. And I would always mention that quote, discipline yourself so others don't have to. What was it? Success is peace of mind, which is direct result and self-satisfaction, knowing you did your best to become the best you're coming. That really resonated with me when I read that. And so what I was doing early was just trying to develop basketball players instead of trying to develop my players to be better people, to be leaders. And that's sustainable success. And I learned that from my own frustrations starting out. My first head coaching job, we were 3-18. That's 3 wins and
18 losses.
So after that first season, I knew I had a lot of work to do, and I had a lot of questions. I started reaching out to get answers for those questions. And since then, we really tried to emphasize in developing our players to be better people first, better basketball. I used to say this a lot, playing basketball is what you do. It's not who you are.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah, and you focused on more who they were, and so did Wooden. Coach Wooden. And I remember a long time ago, Donnie, reading his book, not the little blue book that you have, but the black book. Just his autobiography or his biography. I can't remember which one it was, and I was just so so impressed by him. So I would love, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but I printed it off. He has got a pyramid of success, and maybe we can include this. You have it, don't you?
I have an autographed one.
Oh, Jenny, you should take a picture of that. So we both have it. I love the quote that you just said because it's at the top of the pyramid of success. Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction and knowing that you did your best to become the best that you're capable of becoming. And that is really all that we could ask of anybody, right?
Yes.
Donnie, did you do your best? Did you do your best? Just try to be a better version of yourself. But if you have not, and we'll maybe put this in the show notes, that is so funny that we both held it up at the same time. But this pyramid of success, I think there's like at the top, it's competitive greatness, but there's about 14 different central elements of character development here. And then on the sides, there's these other words like ambition and adaptability and resourcefulness and fight and faith and patience. And I think those really represent the values that support the central elements or the qualities. And of course, prayer, I mean, when you're talking prayer, I mean, and faith, that's an action, that we're doing. But I absolutely love this. Did you like kind of go through each of these character elements and kind of focus on them as you were coaching, Donnie?
I would use these relative to whatever we were going through at that time. I think trust is huge. I think trust is huge. And I tell players, you want me to trust you and I want to trust you, but it's our habits every day that develops that trust. Talk is cheap.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be a leader. You want your people to follow you, if you will. Then you have to set the right example.
Right.
You can't have trust without honesty. And I think that's so important. Everywhere I go now, I speak. The main thing I hear is, hey, we're getting these people that are in leadership positions and they don't know how to lead. Well, it's your job. It's not their job. It's your job to take them from point A to point B. It's all Jim Dandy to have these mission statements and all this stuff on the wall. That doesn't, as my dad used to say, that dog don't hunt. You have to sit down. You have to work with people. You have to set the right example. Your example isn't the main thing in leadership. It's the only thing in leadership. That's from Morgan Wooten, the great coach at DeMatha High School.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's gone, but he's passed. But and I think accountability is so important. If you want to be a leader, you have to be able to hold people accountable to your standards and to your values. And there's a way to do that, in a kind and caring way. But sometimes you've done this. You got to be honest with people. This behavior has to change. This is not how we do things here. And you work on your culture. I guess culture is the big buzzword, but it's not there. It has to be worked on every day. It can't.
So true.
With your team, you're working on that every day. And one of the things that I learned and it took a while, is look for the positive, not the negative. When you see somebody that's doing the way you want it done, you need to reaffirm that very quickly, that behavior. And the other ones see that and they say, golly, coach really likes that. Maybe I need to step in line and do that too.
Yes.
And then I think another thing is commitment. I think, your players have to be committed, and committed is an action.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for a coach to develop trust with you if you're not coming in and putting in the extra time and being committed to the team first.
Yes.
And those are all things that I think are things that in a nutshell that I would take from John Wooden. And another person who's really influenced me too, that's really a John Wooden disciple, if you will, was Don Meyer. Don Meyer's the greatest coach that no one's heard of.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know Don Meyer. Tell us more.
Well, when I was a young coach, somebody sent me information about Don Meyer. Don Meyer was a head coach at David Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee. And he would have clinics, and there would be 2,000 or 3,000 coaches there. He taught me how to teach the game, how to teach. And it was such a, I mean, I know he's gone now, and there's an E60 story about him. If you want to have a good feeling about Don Meyer, he still has a website as well that you can go on there and get different leadership things. So, yeah, he helped me tremendously, and he was huge on developing leaders as well. And then probably the third person who's helped me is Bob Knight. And a lot of times when I say Bob Knight, people think of all the, things that, and I don't agree with everything that Coach did. However, I went to his coaching academy, which would be maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people there. He opened up his whole program at Indiana to all these coaches. He showed everything they did. So when I was a young coach, I went to that clinic. And I stayed there for 3 days. There was probably 2 practices on Friday, 3 on Saturday, and 3 on Sunday. So you're talking about 8 practices. He opened up, he showed everything that they did. And I was watching what they were doing, and bam, I said, this is how the game should be taught. Motion offense, teaching kids how to play, don't run plays, man-to-man defense. And so those are real. And so he was another one that had a huge influence on my life. And the thing I loved about teaching motion, teaching kids how to play, was it was the greatest developer of teamwork of anything you could do. And then I had a player that ended up playing for him, and I developed a relationship with him and his assistants, and I was learning even more. And I was constantly asking questions, and I just been so blessed. And I had really good players too. I had a kid that ended up being SEC Player of the Year, first round draft choice. So when I had these really good players, coaches would come in, and I would sit down with them and talk and ask them questions, and they would send me stuff. They would send me video, and I was constantly trying to get better. And one of my favorite times was when we didn't have cell phones, and I'm sure everybody knows who Bill Self is. Well, Bill Self was at Tulsa when I was a young coach at Shawnee Mission West. He was recruiting this kid. Matt Freege's his name. And he was up in my coaching office after I don't think it was a Thursday night. No, it was a Friday night game. He came and watched, and then he came in my office. We stayed up till 2:00 in the morning in my office talking basketball. Well, my wife calls my office. What are you doing? Are you watching film? I said, no, I'm here with Coach. She goes, well, you probably ought to get home. And I said, yeah. So I ended up, and there's another guy who took his, and of course I had a player he wanted, right? But he still stood there. He stayed there and taught me. And I just been Roy Williams.
You absorbed it. I mean, like I said, I mean, you're a coach, but you're a student,
Yes.
Donnie, that's what I'm hearing. It's like you're still a student.
Yes.
And then relaying those things, and whether it's, from somebody that you've met or somebody that you work directly with. Well, you know what? I have got so many more questions, but we need to take a really quick break, and then we'll come right back with Donnie Campbell on the Something Extra podcast.
Hey there. In a challenging business climate like this, savvy leaders look to technology to find an edge. This can mean the difference between staying ahead of the curve or playing catch-up. It's time to collaborate with the highly skilled experts at Technology Partners. Our team of technologists draws upon decades of experience for your project. with each bringing a passion for solving problems and a track record of success. How can we help you overcome your biggest technology challenges? Visit technologypartners.net to book a free consultation with one of our leaders.
So welcome back, everyone, to the Something Extra podcast with Donnie Campbell. Donnie, it's been so much fun to spend time with you today. And I could tell you and I could probably talk for 10 hours and just keep going.
Hopefully we're there. Everybody out there's had a happy new year and enjoying this. And I just feel very blessed and humbled and privileged to be able to do this. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we've already talked about this, but I know that you coached Jason when he was at Shawnee Mission. I have a couple questions about that. How was he as a person? How was he as a person? How was he back then as a basketball player?
Well, number one, he was a good player. He didn't always like to play defense like I wish he would. In fact, I think it was brought out on one of the shows on TV morning shows, and I nicknamed him Jason Sudeikis. I took the D out of his name because he liked playing offense. He didn't like playing defense. However, he knew that if he didn't play defense, he didn't play. So he did play defense. He didn't like school. So we had an agreement that, you need to be in school, you need to be doing your work. But he was a good teammate. That group of kids that he played with, that I coached, they're still friends to this day. And they would do anything for each other. Mm-hmm. That was a special group. And it was a special group for a young coach. I needed that group. I wouldn't have known how to handle issues that go with teams, the different personalities, and strengths. Mm-hmm. That group was easy to coach. They not only listened, but they heard what I was saying. And I have a fond memories of that group. Jason, you could tell he was very witty. And I remember finding out that, his uncle, his mom's brother, was on Cheers.
Oh, really?
I don't think a lot of people know that. Who was the guy that, I think he was the one that was always at the bar drinking, but that was his uncle. So, that could be wrong, but I think that's true though. And so when I heard that, I thought, I just thought in the back of my mind, his wittiness, that's the avenue he'll end up going. Mm-hmm. Now, he wanted to be a basketball player. He went to a junior college and played and then ended up going to KU and going to school. But that wasn't what he really wanted to do. I know it takes all of us sometimes to figure out what we really want to do. Some people earlier than others. He knew that he wanted to be an actor. He wanted to be a comedian. And as we all well know, look where he's at now. He's tremendously successful. And the thing that I love about Jason, though, that I really love the most is he still gives back here in Kansas City. He hasn't forgot Kansas City.
I love that. He comes
back and does a couple charity events. One's for Children's Mercy Hospital here, and I think the other one is for wounded soldiers. But don't quote me on that. And but that's what I'm most proud of him. I know everybody said, well, you should be proud of him. I'm proud of him that he hasn't forgot where he came from, and he's still giving back to the community. That's what means the most to me, and I'm really proud of him of that.
Mm-hmm. Strong character. He said that while you were the inspiration for Ted Lasso's coaching style, Donnie, his dad inspired his mustache.
I could see that. I putting a mustache on me is like putting a tie on a pig. It's still a pig, right? I'm not gonna put a mustache on me.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. But what I think is really funny about this whole thing, Donnie, you'd never even seen the show. And then one day you're walking down the hall and one of the other teachers goes, "Hey, there's that famous basketball coach that Jason Sudeikis' character is patterned after." And you're like, "What?"
Right.
And I think you eventually watched it. You and Janice, I think, binge watched it over a weekend or something.
Fell in love with it. So endearing. And I really didn't see myself in the show, but my wife did. Just, my daughters saw it. And I saw many of the lessons that I tried to teach my players and over the years and my students. I always told my kids, I don't coach basketball. I teach attitude. And I said, there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And we're always going to do things the right way. And I said, there's no short term to success. I can think of things that I tried to do in the short term to try to win games. And it always came back to bite me in the seat.
Always came back. I just had this conversation with someone this morning about, it's never like taking shortcuts in business, maybe taking a shortcut on a project or whatever to maximize profit. It's not the right thing to do. Everything we do, there is nothing to be gained ever by taking a shortcut. And the other thing is it will come back to bite you in the butt.
Yep, it always does.
It will. Yes.
And it comes back to do that at the most in a time that you hope it doesn't come back, and I just think that, in the business world too, is sometimes things just don't go right. And you just got to come, hey, I tried my best. It didn't work out. I'm going to try to make this right. And people respect that. They might not like that, but they respect that you're honest. It's the same way, like I think about going to get your car fixed. If I have somebody that's a straight shooter that's say, hey, this is what needs to be done, and I can trust them. I mean, I had a car that I went and took it somewhere and it was going to be $3,000 to fix it. I took it to another place and it cost me $75.
Isn't it?
And I'll never go back to that place.
No.
Because I don't trust them.
That's right. Yeah, you had said that earlier, that trust is so important when we were talking about Wooden and the pyramid of success, that trust, and Covey has Stephen M.R. Covey, not senior, but the son wrote a book several years ago called The Speed of Trust. You can only move as the trust factor goes up, and it's trusting the leader, right? But it's also trusting your team,
right?
If there's distrust among the team, you're not going to be unified. So, I love that you mentioned that. But yeah, Ted Lasso, it's such a feel good show. But I love what you said. You said after you watched it, Donnie, that you felt like you learned more from the show.
Oh, yeah.
Than probably Jason ever learned from you. And that's a very humble thing to say. I would imagine he would not say the same thing. But, I was just thinking about just the impact that you've made on him, Donnie. And I'm thinking about all the other Jasons out there,
right,
that you have made an impact on. And I'm thinking that is, to me, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, that's a definition of success.
I agree. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. It really does. It's humbling. It's surreal. I've just been very blessed to have, I miss the smell of a locker room. I
really?
I do. I miss that impact. I know some people don't. I miss the impact that you make with your players. Mm-hmm. Just like we talked about earlier, I got a text this morning from a player who thanked me, and I'll get players ask me or call me or come up to me and say what they have kids, and they ask me for advice, and I just say, I said, you know what the right thing to do is. Your gut tells you what the right thing to do. Just always do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And it's really, all of us know what the right thing is to do. It's just, are you willing to do it? And that's leadership right there. I always say, if you want to be a leader, don't sell ice cream, because at times you're going to make some decisions that somebody's not going to like. I had to make cuts every year as a basketball coach. I hated it. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But you only have so many jerseys. You know, you
Right.
have, and it's not picking the best team, it's picking the right team. And I've always believed this. I interviewed for quite a few jobs, and I never felt like I was the best coach. I felt like I was the right coach. And I think for people interviewing for jobs, even though you want a job, I want this job, but does it fit you? Because if it doesn't, then you're going to have heartaches, and the person who hired you is also going to have heartaches because you guys aren't on the same page about how you believe things should be done.
Well, that's so funny that you're saying that. And not the best, but the right one. Because I'm thinking about Ted Lasso. And when he went to Richmond, he knew nothing about soccer, right? He definitely was not the best coach, but he was the right one for the team, at the time. So I love that. One of the first episodes in Ted Lasso, and I don't know, I haven't talked to you about this, but they posted a sign up there that said "Believe."
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for you as it relates to coaching, teaching? I mean, is that something that you really try to get this, because that's believe in yourself, believe in your team, what does it mean, Donnie?
Well, it encompasses a lot. I just think sometimes kids need love the most when they deserve it the least.
Mm.
And I think sometimes, I had a kid one time miss a shot that would have won the game. And I could tell that this young man was a really good kid, really good player for us. And after the game, I put my arm around him. I said, if we had to do it all over again, I'd still have you shoot the ball.
Oh.
And I said, it's going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be the one that's going to take the shot. And I know you're going to make it. So people need to be told you still believe in them. It's great to tell them that you believe in when things are going well. But I think as leaders, we all need to, and as coaches, you need to tell people that you believe in them probably the most when things aren't going well.
Yeah. Wow. What sage advice. Tell me this, because you and I kind of talked in a sidebar conversation. I think it might be really helpful for our listeners, because sports is youth sports. Mm-hmm. It's such a big thing, isn't it, Donnie? I mean, you had 3 girls of your own. They all played sports. And you told me, you said you really didn't get involved. If we've got listeners out there that are parents of athletes, what kind of advice would you give them? And I know kind of what you did for your girls, but what would you say to them?
Number one, they better be having fun. If they're not enjoying it, then they shouldn't be. Don't force them to do it. I never forced my kids to do anything. If they did do it, they were going to finish it, whether they liked it or not.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about, finish. But
yes.
I think, number one, they've got to love it. And the reason why kids are getting out of, I think the percentage is like 80, it's in the 80%, 87%, don't quote me on that, are getting out of activities, sports activities by the age of 13. So why are they getting out of it? They're getting it out of it for 2 reasons. The parents who are trying to live their life, their sports career through their kids. And number 2, of coaches who really don't know how to teach, that really don't know the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm seeing now from kids now, I'll give an example of basketball players. And I watch a lot of games still. I still go to high school games and I watch college games. And kids now are more athletic than they've ever been. But their basketball IQ is not very good. They really don't understand how to play.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's totally different than what I believe in. I always wanted my kids to be fundamentally sound and to play as a team. And if your kids are on a team and they're enjoying what they're doing and they're learning so many lessons, and are they always going to be happy with the coach? Of course not. But it's not your responsibility as a parent to jump in and try to get your kid whatever. Maybe it's more playing time. You need to have your son or daughter go talk to the coach because this is not about you. It's about the kids. Kids
Yeah.
haven't changed. Parents have changed.
Mm,
And
it's a good
to
point.
me, I just wanted to stay out of it. I don't know what they're doing in practice. I don't want to know what they're doing in practice. I'm just going to go to the game. I remember my youngest daughter played soccer. We were in a tournament in Iowa, and she was on a really good team. And I think they played 3 games that weekend. And it was a little expensive. We had to get a hotel, and all the stuff that goes into it for people that are doing traveling teams and stuff like that. I don't think my daughter played 4 minutes. So as we're driving home, she says to me, she says, "Dad, can I talk to you?" I said, "Well, sure. What's going on?" She goes, I said, "What did you think about this week?" I said, "Sydney, it didn't matter if you played 4 minutes, 40 minutes or not play. I still love you. I'm proud of you." And so it was never about me, about her success on the soccer field or basketball floor. It was about what kind of kids they are. Are they learning lessons from what they're doing? Now everything's about, okay, can I get my daughter or son a college scholarship? And that's great. I think that's a great goal. But to me, are they having fun? Are they learning? Are they learning fundamentals? Are they learning the right way how to work with other people? All those things. But we're way out. The horse is out of the barn now. There's too much money involved with it, with youth sports. Look at the collegiate ranks. You got NIL, the money. There's so much money involved. People are transferring from team to team. Why? Because of the almighty dollar. And that's what youth sports are. I mean, it's money, and it's really not about developing these kids to be better people, which is what I think sports are, and so I'm sure there's some parents out there who have their kids playing a lot of different club sports and think this guy's crazy. I've done it long enough to know that your kids would rather have their grandparents at their game than the parent, because all the grandparent says after the game is they love them. They don't want to be in their car going home with your parents rehashing every play that you didn't make, every free throw you missed or whatever. They won't say that to the parents because they love their parents so much. And then the coach is telling them things. So that's where there's, they want to try to please the coach, but then they want to try to please the parents. And that's where there's the problem.
Yeah. Such great advice, Donnie. And you're like, you know what? I just, you said with my girls, I just wanted to be the parent. I didn't try to coach them. I didn't try to do the play-by-play or the places that they could improve. And you said the thing that your girls remember is going to have ice cream or going to Applebee's, getting half-price appetizers or whatever. That's the thing that they remember. Yeah.
That's what they remember.
Yes.
And I miss that too.
Yeah.
But I've got grandkids now, so I'm going to be able to go watch them and take them in the gym and say, "Hey, Papa, will you take me to the gym and teach me how to shoot?" And I would love to do it, but unless they facilitate that, I'm just going to go watch them and enjoy myself. And that's what my wife always, we enjoy being around our family and our kids. That's what's really all about, is family, isn't it?
It is. It really, really is. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, I am thinking about how you just pour out, because you're a math teacher now. Mm-hmm. So you teach math, you're around students, you're around kids all the time. You're constantly pouring out. And Donnie, I know that you cannot constantly pour out without being poured into. So how do you do that? How do you self-care? How do you keep energized so that you can go be the best version of you for those students?
Well, the biggest thing in teaching is there's always work to do. I mean, you're going to have papers to grade. You're going to have emails to get a hold of. I just don't take it home. I mean, I work hard when I'm there. I guess I work smarter now. I just don't work harder. I don't take that stuff home because it's family time then. Mm-hmm. And also, I don't take myself too serious. That's just me. I think that you've got to put yourself first in everything you do. Like today, I worked out. I think you need to work out. I think you need to to have somebody that you work with that you can confide in, that it's not going to go anywhere else, where you can talk, because there's challenges. We all have them. Everybody wants to say with Ted Lasso, it's feeling good, but it's not always feel good. There's things that go on in the classroom, and so I just always tried to not take myself too serious. I don't take the work home. And then I try to think you got to take care of yourself. And when I wake up in the morning, I have certain things that I look at that are positive. I do my devotions, do my spiritual stuff in the morning. I want to go to school in a good frame of mind. And that's just me. Everybody's different. I mean, I just think that you need to take care of it. You're going to burn out. I've been doing this 38 years. I see so many young teachers are getting out of teaching. We've got some really good young teachers. I mean, I told one of them one day, I said, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon here. So you want to be your best when your best is needed, and you can't go 99 miles an hour and keep doing that for as long as I've been doing it
without burning out. Yeah.
And that's what I see from teachers a lot of. And of course, they look at the money side of it. I understand that, the money side of it too. But I just think that it's burnout city. If you're just don't take it home, it's going to be there tomorrow anyway.
Right.
And then I think too is have a list of 3 things that you have to get done. Get those 3 things done.
Yes.
If you put a list of 10 things, then you're only going to get probably 1 thing done if you're lucky, or not get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have a list of
it's
stuff.
Too overwhelming.
Exactly.
Too overwhelming. Yeah.
I do that too.
Great advice. Great advice. Well, let me ask you this. This is called something extra.
Uh-oh.
What do you say is the something extra that every leader needs?
Wow, what a great question. I think you need to come every day with juice. I think every day you need to come with that enthusiasm, that juice. I tell my students, I said, I can promise you this much. I'll come every day with juice. And they'll look at me like I'm crazy. They think I'm going to bring them orange juice. Energy, with excitement.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was ever achieved without enthusiasm. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. And I think if you're not enthusiastic about what's going on, then everybody around you, what's that? You're either an energy giver or an energy vampire. And I think that you need to come every day with enthusiasm. When I get to the point in teaching where I don't enjoy what I do, then that's time to do something else. With the speaking around the country now, that's kind of invigorated, kind of sharpened my saw a little bit. But I just think, number one, you need to bring juice every day. And
love it.
That's my opinion.
Love it. I love it, Donnie. Well, this has been so much fun. I so appreciate you making the time. I cannot wait for our listeners to hear this episode. And I feel like you brought the juice today. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Something Extra with Lisa Nichols is a Technology Partners production. Copyright Technology Partners, Inc. 2019. For show notes or to reach Lisa, visit tpi.co/podcast. Don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you listen.